I was only 7 years old when I experienced my first paranormal activity. My mother always told us my grandmother's house was haunted, but we never believed her. She said when she was younger, she would go into her bedroom and see a little girl leaning over her bed and crying. When my mother would ask her if she was okay, the little girl would turn around with her head down and walk out the door. My grandmother never believed her, and it wasn't until years later that my grandmother admitted that she had also seen the little girl and others in the house. My story begins when I was just 7 years old. I was playing with one of my favorite dolls that my grandmother had. It wasn't just a flimsy old doll, it was like an old antique porcelain doll. She had medium length curly blonde hair and like a long white nightgown. It looked kind of like a dress, and a pink headband bow in her hair. She was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen in my short little life. Every time I was at my grandma's, I would run and grab the doll that I would call Sussy and run around the house and play with her. I would always hear my grandma yell behind me, "Be careful, Sussy." I always thought I just didn't hear the words in between careful and Sussy, and she was telling me to be careful with Sussy. But now I know she was telling Sussy to be careful with me. On the particular day that terrified me half to death, it was quite stormy outside, and I knew I would have to play inside with Sussy today. I climbed down what felt like the longest stairs ever to my grandmother's basement, where she decided to put Sussy before I got there. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I seen Sussy sitting in the chair by the fireplace. "Hi, Sussy. It's very stormy outside, so we can't go on the swings today. What should we do?" As I finished my sentence and grabbed Sussy off of her chair, I heard a noise come from the playroom. "Good idea, Sussy. We can play a house in there." I held on to her and ran into the playroom, closing the door and turning on the light behind me. I spent only a few minutes playing house with Sussy when the lights began to flicker. "Wow, Sussy, what do you think that was?" As soon as I finished my sentence, the lights shut off completely, and I heard just a little, "It was me." Sussy was the only one with me in the room, so I knew it had to be her. I dropped her on the ground and ran straight towards the nearest closet. I ran into the closet and slammed the door behind me. I reached up and turned the closet light on. I was relieved to be in there, safe from what was ever out there. I slowly moved to sit down on the ground and wait until I could leave safely when I heard a small laugh from behind me. Scared half to death, I slowly turned around, just in time for Sussy to jump at me. When I was younger, I'd go visit my grandparents all the time. They lived in a one-floor home with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage, and I always got a horrible feeling when going close to it. And let me add that this was a newer house that was only about 6 years old. Now, during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there. Even when I was with someone, I didn't like it. I remember going down there with my grandma to help with something. She had to run upstairs though because someone rang the doorbell. She said she would be right back, even though she knew how I felt about being alone down there. But I nodded and said, well, okay. While I was alone, I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move and didn't want to, even though the lights were on. Now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The lights started to flicker, and I started to hear noises and what sounded like talking. It was not coming from upstairs, but it was like in the storage room. I heard someone say my name. Here is the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was so confused. How am I hearing her when she is upstairs? I didn't want to move, but me being the curious one that I am, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, the worse the bad feeling became. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. I wanted to run upstairs and hide, go home, somewhere that wasn't in the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. It was my grandma's voice asking me to open the door to help her. So I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. I couldn't hear anything except for faint laughing that felt like forever. But then the laughing stopped, and the lights turned back on, and I felt a little bit better, but the downside, I could see a little in the storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room, and my grandmother hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is there a clown doll? I have no idea. Suddenly, the lights turned on in the storage room. I saw red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and blacked out, and the next thing I knew, I was laying on the couch. My grandma was looking at me and asking if I was okay. I have no idea if that was real or a dream, but it sure felt real. My sister Penny was always afraid of the upstairs at our house. She never went up there at night, and our main conversation every night went something like this. Penny would ask, "Hey, Buffy, can you go upstairs and find me my white sweater, black jeans, and leather jacket?" Of course, the clothes items would change from night to night, but I was always asked to get her things. She would not go up without an adult after dark. I would always say, "Why can't you go get them?" "Well, because something is up there." "I sleep up there and nothing has happened to me." "Just wait. Someday it will." Okay, now I will admit it is creepy as hell up there. I will give you the layout though. There are 2 bedrooms that lead into each other, no hallway, and there is an attic above and 1 on each side. The house is well over 100 years old, and there is a banister over the stairs, but it is closed off by a door. I remember Penny coming home from dates, and before she would take her boyfriend upstairs, she would send him up with a flashlight to check the closets and under the beds, even though I was in one of those beds. Once when our mother asked her why she would not sleep upstairs in her room, she rattled off like numerous reasons. She would say, "You can see small lights coming out of the closet, and you can hear footsteps and heavy breathing in the attics. There is always a sense of being watched a little too closely." I would always say, "That is ridiculous. I have never seen anything or heard anything. You should stop letting her sleep on the couch every night." Then my mom would respond, "She's okay. She can sleep where she wants. She's not hurting anything." To me, I think my mom knew, but since nothing was bothering me at the time, she overlooked it. Better to have 1 daughter on the couch than 2. I even took this problem to my dad, being as he always was on my side, and Mom seemed to be always on Penny's side. Well, eventually my sister got married and moved out when she was 18, and I was 11. I guess the ghost or whatever thought it was my turn. Here's my experience. In the attics, I would hear stomping, and it was not in just one attic, it was all 3. There were whispers in the closet like 2 children having a conversation. The conversations I overheard were from talking about dolls. Sometimes they were trying to figure out what happened to someone named Uncle Dofi, and sometimes it sounded as if they were discussing how they could run away. I did not get a bad feeling from the girls in the closet. I was always being watched all day and all night and lived in a constant state of panic. When I was upstairs, Every nerve was on edge. The worst thing was this big black shadow in the middle of the night asking where Penny was. The voice wasn't the voice of a kid. It sounded like it came from someone who smoked 4 packs of cigarettes a day for 50 years. The black shadow asked about my sister 6 times every night. When I would not answer out of fear, the shadow would throw things at me, books, figurines, and pictures. Then it was my turn to sleep on the couch, and that's when I understood my sister. It wasn't an excuse. She actually heard these things. I never understood why I didn't until after Penny moved out, and I was bullied by this ghost, or whatever it is. That's what this entity was, a bully. Something that always had to have power over us, the young, powerless sisters that lived in the home. Fast forward 2 years after Penny was gone. She had her own home. Well, my oldest sister, Jeannie, couldn't afford the house she was renting due to being in the middle of a divorce, so she and her 3 kids moved in with us. Jennifer, which was 5, Kevin, who was 3, and Amanda, who was 2. Jennifer, the 5-year-old, would be staying with me, and we were both expected to sleep upstairs. We were woken up all the time by stomping, and when Jennifer would start to cry from being scared, I would have to tell her it was because the house was old, and that's what old homes did. They settled at night. This is exactly what my mom always told me when I heard odd noises in our home. Jennifer's 6th birthday rolls around, and my mother buys her one of those creepy clown dolls. You know, the ones with a plastic head, a wire body under its clown clothes, and has the most insanely evil laugh. That clown was always going off by itself at night, never during the day. One night, I decided I had had enough, so I got out of bed and went over to take the batteries out. But when I opened the battery pack, no batteries. I told my mom and older sister, but no one cared. Or they just thought it was an overactive imagination. Penny believed me. So the next day, I got up and threw it in the attic. It would still go off in the middle of the night. Then one day, I came home, and the doll was out of the attic and sitting on the chair across from my bed. When I asked who put it there, no one knew. We ended up burning that doll. Penny came and burned sage in our home. Now that I am an adult, my kids, who like to stay with my mom, always tell me about their things being moved and their chargers being jerked from the wall. I still feel that it waits to this day for Penny to come home. Maybe because she feared it the most. I don't know. But I know that that bully brought me a lot closer to the sister whom I couldn't possibly live without now.